we call supply chain. And different people use the word supply chain very differently. The organizations look really different. And this concept of supply chain leadership, of being sure that we understand the constraints and limitations and opportunities across how we sell, how we deliver, how we manufacture, how we source, concepts around bidirectional orchestration, getting functions to work together, alignment. That is the essence of leadership. And I met Darrell Edwards when I was working on a doctorate program, and Darrell and I happened to be in the same group, and that may not have been a good thing for him, I got to tell you. But it was about research, and Darrell and I had some great conversations, and he is the chief editor of Lazy Boy. And I am proud to say, Scott, my 3 Skye Terriers sleep on a Lazy Boy sofa, and they love it a lot. And Scott got it to me on time during COVID. So let's bring him to the stage and hear about leadership. Come on, Darrell. Don't tell him how bad I was in my team.
No, so thank you, Laura.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Laura and I are old friends, and really enjoyed, and had a partnership, I guess, to some degree over the years since then. So thank you, Laura. Appreciate the introduction, and thank you all for allowing me to be with you today. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here. And I mean this sincerely. I love talking about talent. I love talking about people. And today we're going to talk a little bit in our short time together about maybe leadership and building winning teams within the supply chain. I do think a lot of what we do really still are fundamentals and are really building on the basics. I know this is an incredibly changing environment we live in. It's very technology driven, but at the end of the day, I think Yogi Berra said this. I'll quote him anyway, as saying, I'm full of great advice, and all my great advice has come from bad experiences. And I'm a true testament of that. And so I've learned a lot by making a lot of mistakes. And so what I'm going to share with you today are some of the things that worked for me. I won't share a lot of the things that didn't work for me. So we'll talk about, best practices, kind of tried and true things within what I think is really standards within talent management and leading people. Talk about winning the war for talent, probably never been more important than it is today. It's an incredibly difficult thing we're doing, staffing, training, hiring, getting our enterprise, our businesses successful. And really, I do think people are the key, and people are centric. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll talk a few things about leadership concepts and maybe kind of pull it all together in the last few minutes. Okay. And I'd really like to talk, I guess, specifically before we get started about what I think success might look like today. First and foremost, you're all really talented people. You're all professionals. You're all successful. You wouldn't be here today if you weren't. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, you're going to say, yep, done that. Yep, been there. Yep, got it. And probably I'm not going to just impart you with just tremendous wisdom because you, again, are quite successful and well experienced. But what I do hope is that maybe, just maybe, one thing might resonate for you. One new idea, one new concept, one thing you might want to go back and try tomorrow that makes your business a little better than it is today. And if that happens, then I think we've been successful. And so that's what I really like to do is when I meet with smart people like yourselves, and by the way, I took a lot of notes this morning already. I like to learn, and I like to try to say, okay, what can I take away from this and hopefully make my business a little better tomorrow than it is today. Real quickly, I do work for Lazy Boy. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Lazy Boy Incorporated, Senior Vice President, so I have to, and I will include any kind of disclaimers within my presentations. There may be some forward-looking statements talked about, but anyway, so this is our disclaimer that I'd like for you to be aware of. Okay, all right. So why do we even need to practice talent management, or why is leadership that big a deal? And I thought a lot about this, and frankly, in the program Laura and I were in together, I actually spent a lot of time in research doing that. So I guess the question that was posed to me, at least the kind of rattling around in my brain, was, you have similar businesses sometimes competing in similar markets, selling similar products. We can all buy the same equipment. We can all hire the same consultants. We can all deploy the same processes, right? So why do some firms win and some firms lose? And I tend to think really the only true differentiator are the people and the leaders. And so people ask me all the time, say, Darrell, you work at Lazy Boy, you're responsible for the global supply chain. Where do you spend most of your time? I say with the people, because I truly think this. I think I'm in the people business. We just happen to make great furniture. And so that's kind of how I look at it. And that's why I think it's important to practice talent management. One of my favorite quotes is this: what we're doing is incredibly dynamic, right? this global supply chain thing is really amazing. And it's gotten more amazing and more dynamic and more difficult the last year or so. Yeah. So I love this quote by General Shinseki. If you don't like change, you're going to like your relevance even less. And that is truly, truly a fact. Right? I remember growing up as a child. Some of you may have heard this from your mom, your dad. Two things are certain, Darrell. I was told, death and taxes. I'd say there's at least three, and that's change. And so how do we navigate that? And that's kind of a big part of why I think some firms win, some firms lose, why some people, some businesses, some enterprises are successful and some aren't. And the fact of the matter is we're all business people. We all are here to create value for our shareholders, our stakeholders, right? And the fact of the matter is, managing talent well, being, studying leadership, being a great leader is just good for business. I mean, the data says it. Now, this is a bit dated, but I think at the end of the day, it's very relevant. And I think if you look at most data, it would say that talent management, really best practices create value. Benchmark studies have found over and over and over, return on equity increases, return on assets increase, net profit increases, EBITDA increases. If we invest time, if we make talent management and leadership a strategic imperative, there is a great return on it. Now, here's an old slide that I kind of put together for, I guess, a supply chain strategy when we were kind of looking at reinventing ourselves some time ago, but I think it's still relevant today because what I'd like for you to take away from this are the fundamentals, the foundational piece. So we said, we wanted to take and reinvent our supply chain a while back, and we looked at it from end to end and forget the pillars, whether it be what you're responsible for. But if you think about it, we wanted to be excellent at what we did. We wanted to deliver tremendous value for all of our key stakeholders. So we put together a strategy. We said supply chain at the top, operational excellence at the top. We have all these pillars of things that we do within our business. And hopefully, if it's done well in your supply chain strategy or your strategy, it should align with your corporate or your enterprise strategy, right? You should be an enabler for that. So they said, if we're going to do this really well, we want to make sure that we go out and we study and benchmark companies that we admire and aspire to be as good at or better at what we do. And so we're going to benchmark a lot of companies that do the things we do. We're going to put in process improvements in areas where there are gaps, perhaps. And then we're going to take and measure ourselves. We'll do an as-is state, and we'll put a future, what-if state in place. But most importantly, we're going to make sure that we have the talent, the people, and the leadership resource to support that strategy. Because we felt like if you look at the bottom, that cut across every one of those benchmarks, every one of those pillars, every portion of our strategy was anchored foundationally by talent. And we felt like that was the number one thing. So we spent a lot of time working on talent. And so just at a high level, kind of our strategy house that we did some time ago. And I said at the beginning of the conversation that I really believe a lot of what we do from talent management or leadership perspective really is executing really, really well, excellently on the fundamentals. And so here are some of the fundamentals. None of this is probably things you haven't seen or perhaps practiced, but my team and I, this was, again, pre-pandemic. We've done it mostly virtually since. But we literally spent 4 days a year, my team and I, sequestered, very much like this, talking about talent. We did biannual reviews, we did succession planning, we did talent development strategy planning, we put in career development plans for all of our key leaders, for all of our aspiring leaders we did. We had some strong conversations about, what do you want to do in your career? How can we support that? And if you'd like to do certain things, then here's what we need and expect of you. So we had those conversations. We saw where we had gaps and really went out and recruited and tried to hire bench strength in those places. And if we had people that maybe weren't doing as well as, as we needed them to do, we tried to help them be successful. And we had those conversations as well. But this is not landmark stuff. And the tools we used aren't, just, oh, wow, this is new innovative talent management tool. It's fantastic. But at the end of the day, the richness came from having the conversations, having the interaction, dedicating the time, making it important and an imperative in the business. And so I would encourage you, again, if this is something that you find interesting and you feel like it should be a strategic imperative for your business, invest the time. We invest 4 days a year in this, my team and I, and we spend a lot of time working on it throughout the year to get ready for those 4 days. Another thing we do, and we kind of leverage this as not only what we consider a best practice within the supply chain space, maybe probably do something similar, but also as an opportunity to take and, really help your emerging leaders have a forum for development. So once a year, and again, we've done it the last couple of years virtually, we have our annual supplier summit. So our world headquarters is just south of Detroit. And we bring about 350 people globally to Detroit, our top 350 suppliers and employees we bring in, and we have our annual supplier summit. It's about 2 days, and we talk about things like, getting better from a quality standpoint, getting better from a cost standpoint, getting better from a service standpoint, also getting better from a sustainability standpoint. We want to be kind to our planet. We talk about those things. We put in metrics in place and goals, and we have really collaborative discussions that helps our supply base understand what our overall strategy is. And it's a really great working session. But most of that session is led, moderated, and the awards even. And by the way, we give out awards at the end of the second night. Our CEO speaks, and it's a pretty cool event. And we recognize those top performers throughout that global supply base. But most of that is driven by our emerging talent. We make it that's again, one of those 4 days that we talked about. We set this up and we say, who's going to present what, and who's going to introduce what, and who's going to lead this discussion. And it's not most of the people on my team. It's most of the people 2 and 3, levels below that we see these as great leaders that are going to be the leaders of the organization 5, 10, 15 years from now. And so we start preparing early, and it's just a great opportunity. And again, you guys and ladies may or may not have a forum, an event like this. You may. But the point of this is my suggestion might be look for opportunities to put key emerging leaders within your organization into roles that help them grow. Give them a chance to speak to senior leaders such as yourselves and to take and showcase their good work, their talent, and their capability to help the business going forward. Something else we do about every 2 years is something we call Supply Chain University. We bring in about the top 60 leaders from our supply chain throughout the world, throughout the globe. Probably 40 or so are seasoned leaders, 20 or so are emerging leaders. And we have a week-long event somewhere, and it's usually at a university setting. We bring in guest speakers to talk about leadership, to talk about supply chain, talk about strategy, talk about the latest trends within the business. We have classroom-type discussions. That's actually a picture of one of the events we had. We have a case study competition, whereas we take 4 or 5 real world problems that we're dealing with in our business, probably 4 to 6 weeks before the event. These are big deal problems that's kind of cutting across the entire enterprise. We pick some of those emerging leaders to put them on teams, case teams, if you will. We give them about a month to work on it. And then the last day of Supply Chain University, we have them present out on their findings. We have kind of a survey monkey set up, and we vote. And then the collective votes are tallied, and at that point, we have winners of the case. By the way, some people have pushed back a lot, some of our emerging leaders, and say, gosh, you only gave us a month to solve this big problem. So it's really not enough time. So my pushback is because we try to put people in real world simulations, right? So answer me this. Every situation you deal with, every problem you have, everything you face, you have all the resources you need, all the time you need. You never have to take and have any difficulty with, well, of course not. Okay, I need you to solve this problem. And so that's kind of how we try to approach it. Again, it's a lot of fun. But we have Supply Chain Olympics, much like what I think you guys and ladies did yesterday or this morning maybe. We literally have, I have people come in and talk about health and wellness. I have people come in and talk about executive wellness, about nutrition, taking care of the body, taking care of your health. Because as executives, that's important that that we're prepared mentally and physically to take in and to play this great game of business, right? We have speakers come in and talk to us about, again, latest trends. And then the last night, prior to the last day, we actually have an awards banquet. We have awards we give out. There's metric-driven awards, right, for the teams that have the best quality, safety, cost, those kind of things. That's important. We also have the People's Choice Awards within the supply chain, whereas we have people nominated for other really important stuff by their peers, like Leader of the Year, like Community Partner of the Year, those kind of, and then they're voted on by the entire, supply chain team. And then we give out awards that night. The CEO usually speaks and hands those out. So it's a kind of a cool event. Those are actually pictures of the awards we've given out before. Again, another tool we use, not trying to advocate you need it or don't need it, It's just something that works for us, that we identify, emerging talent. We try to develop a forum that they can take and grow and blossom and take and interact with senior leaders. Every person on the C level within our company, whether it's chief marketing officer, whether it's chief supply chain, or chief operation officer, whether it's CEO, CFO, they all speak at this event throughout the week. We make sure that these people are exposed to the senior leaders of the team. It's just a good way for us to take and develop talent. Again, it's one of those 4 days that we kind of spend sequestered. This is planning one of these events. That's another thing we do. And I guess it was hit on, I think, this morning as I sat in one of the sessions. People talked about culture, and it's critically important. Could not agree with you more. It's fantastically important. I think it's important, though, that culture is aligned very much with the values of not only the company but the team. And I'm going to show you a video in a moment about culture. It's something that we work at very hard. Again, we work at getting better every day. Not by any means implying we have the answers or we've got cracked the code on it, but we're trying to get better every day. I took notes this morning. I want to learn from you. I'm going to go back and implement some of the things that I picked up, and I hope you'll do the same. But there's just one of kind of our employee brand posters that we have. We may be famous for our recliners, but we didn't take that sitting down. Those are actual pictures of our employees. Those are things that we really value. We make sure that our values that we take and talk about as a team are the people that we ask to be part of our team are very much aligned with the company's values and our own core values. And so to me, that's how you build a strong culture. And once you have true alignment, true congruency, I believe that's when the magic occurs. So I'd like for you to meet Eric Arnold. Eric's going to tell you his story in about 3 minutes. And I think Eric does a fine job. I'm proud of Eric, proud he's on the team. I think he does a fine job of talking about what we work at really hard, and that is in creating a certain culture within Lazy Boy.
Everybody wants to go to work and feel like they're a part of something. I was very excited to start working at Lazy Boy. It took me 7 months to get hired on here. This was the place to work. This is the place to work. We build more than furniture out here. We build a lot of relationships with our employees, and we want to provide our customers with a unit that they can be proud of. If I wouldn't buy it, why would I build it? I started in the wood department, pulling long rails which supplied the wood to the sofas to be built. I've had the chance to work in a lot of different areas. I've had a chance to move into a leadership position, and now I can help out the employees still coming up.
I've seen Eric connect with people in a real powerful way because he's a former cell team member. When team members talk to him, he really listens to them. He really values what cell team members have to say.
Listening is one of the best things we can do to stay connected with our employees because they work in these positions all day, every day. They know their jobs a lot better than I do. We work together day in and day out, so we want to make sure to provide the best place for all of us to work.
We have a culture here of caring, a culture of looking out for each other, really a family-type atmosphere in the organization. And Eric's just one member of a large family.
When my son was 3, he was diagnosed with a genetic disease. When he was 5, we decided to move forward with the major stage of treatment for that, which was a bone marrow transplant, which required a lot of travel and a lot of time away and a lot of expense.
When opportunities like this present themselves, where a family's going through a challenge, it's really rewarding to be able to reach out and say, what do you need? How can I help? Let us be there for you.
The employees here at Lazy Boy, they started a fundraiser to provide us travel expenses and medical expenses. A person spends a lot of their time at work, so to go there and feel disconnected would be very difficult. I didn't have to do that. I went through a bone marrow transplant with my son and 350 other people.
I often tell people why I'm still a Lazy Boy, and it's because my personal values are in alignment with the company values.
I've been a Lazy Boy for 15 years because why would I want to go anywhere else?
And in these challenging times, there's certainly opportunity to do that, but we're working hard at it. And I thought Eric, his story and his leader there did a nice job of trying to, or explaining what we're working hard at getting better at doing. So winning the war for supply chain talent, clearly a difficult task we all are facing on a daily basis. Probably, I've been doing the supply chain thing for around 30 plus years. I've never had a more difficult time in this space when it comes to winning the war for supply chain talent. I don't think we're dissimilar to anyone else. But a few takeaways I might suggest are, again, we've kind of hit on these, maybe utilizing some of the best practices out there. Again, tried and true things that have worked. Still using as I said, about 70% of my success or lack thereof at times has been by not executing or executing the basics very well. Okay. Make sure that our goals are really stated, or your goals are stated. We talk about that a lot. It's hard to hit a target you can't see. So we want to make sure they're simple and really, communicated well and easily understood by the entire group. Clearly articulated strategy, showed you the strategy house that we came up with. Everybody within our team got that, saw that, lived that, dealt with that. We talked about people being the key. I said, I really believe, we're in the furniture business, or the people business. We just have to make great furniture. And I do believe that. So we spend a lot of time on the people side of the business. Clearly, this pandemic world, we're all navigating through quite unfortunate situations for people and everyone. It's made that more challenging, and we're learning as we go in many cases. We measure what we do, and we make sure we try, or at least really hard, to make sure that our organizational design is aligned to create the most stakeholder value for our group, given our strategy. So those are just a few things maybe that I think might help you win the war for talents. Work for us. We've kind of built that over a number of years, and it seems to be, clearly relevant today. So before we kind of segue out of the discussion, Laura hit on this as well. It's one thing to attract great people. You do. It's another thing to make sure that they are trained and they fit well within the organization. You will, and you do. I think really the last ingredient to take and really get you from good to great, from compliance to engagement, is a leadership. And I really spend a lot of time on leadership. I'm an aspiring, learning leader. I've been doing this for 30 years, and every day I try to get better. Every day I try to ask myself a couple of questions. I don't know who came up with these ideas, but they're brilliant. It certainly wasn't me. But I ask myself, am I leading the way I want to be led? One thing I ask myself just about every week. And I ask myself just about every week, what I want to work for me. And sometimes I don't like my answer, and I'm working on that. I need to get better. I'm being transparent with myself. And I do some of this stuff to try to get better. But as Laura and I have known each other for a while, and she's a wonderful author, and published many great relative articles. I wrote, I'm not nearly as wonderful as Laura is in this space, but I wrote an article some time ago, and it was this. And I've used this in my leadership style, and I've used this when I talk to young or mentor young leaders within the organizations, and frankly, when I have a chance to speak to people like yourself. And it's this concept of, campaigning for town mayor as being a great leader, especially within our supply chain space. I think it's really relevant. So I'd like you to think about this just a minute. So think about all the people that you know in your local communities. I grew up in small town USA, and you think about the really great town mayors that you might have interfaced with, right? The people that were campaigning for local leadership. And I was thinking about this when I was having a discussion with a professor one day, and he kind of sparked a memory and, a thought. I said, this is pretty good. But they're all pretty good communicators, aren't they? They really connect well with people, right? You're campaigning for town mayor, local leadership. You're a pretty good communicator. They spend a lot of time being visible among the people, right? You see their pictures in the paper where there's ribbon cuttings and there's events that are happening, and they're speaking to the local town, members. Yeah, they spend a lot of time being visible among people. They exercise strong self-control. We've all had bad days, and we all, say, maybe not in the best of moods, but the best, strongest town mayors are really good at still not letting that bother them. They just kind of just let it roll off their back when they're having a bad day, still smile, still lead the way you want to be led, right? They're strong with their character, strong ethical and strong moral character, as we all would expect, and we all should expect of our leadership. They're a visionary. They think about the future. They try to take in and think about what's coming next. Just like I saw on the great artwork that's being done here. the next vision of the supply chain of the future. I think that's fantastic. And I spend a lot of time thinking about that, talking to people about that. And I think the strongest leaders, the good town mayors, think about what's next for their community. Where's the next highway going? Where's the next zoning, recommendations are going to occur regarding, whether it be expansion for industry or whether it be residential expansion. They're thinking about that as the town grows, what's coming up next. So I think, as leaders, we should be thinking like that as well. And clearly you are. Their message, when they're strong and visible among the people, the communication skills they have, it's very consistent, isn't it? Doesn't change. Because a lot of us, that we don't like people to say maybe one thing and do something differently, right? We don't like that within our own businesses. They don't do that if they're really good town mayors. We shouldn't, I think, at least, do that if we want to build maximum trust. I think really consistency of message happens to build maximum trust. And I guess the last thing I would say is, when you're town mayor, when you're campaigning for town mayor, everyone in your community is watching. You kind of sort of do live in a glass house. It's the role and it's the life we've chosen as leaders. Think about that. Whether we're at work, which is our job, but if we lead people or we're at the Friday night football game in the stands, we're still on stage because it's the life we've chosen. The best leaders get that. And so this is kind of a concept. It's worked for me when I mentor, emerging talent. I try to talk to them about this. So when you're, building your style, it needs to be your style. I don't want to impose my style on you, but when you're building your style, think about these things. I found them to be quite successful. And I also think that the best leaders, the strongest leaders, at least the ones I get excited about, have this ability to inspire people, to create this compelling vision, to create, something that makes it more than us because it is, and make sure it's bigger than us because it is. And so I say this a lot. I am extremely proud to work for Lazy Boy. I think it's a fantastic company. I'm honored every day to get to go to work. And I think it's incredibly noble what we do. And from being able to do the things we do with our, interacting with people. So I'm proud of that. But with that being said, I get excited about the fact that if I do my job well, then the people that I serve get to come to work every day. They get to work in a part of the country they want to live in, part of the world they want to live in. They get to help provide for their families. They get to help live a lifestyle that's a good lifestyle. And so to me, that's exciting. That's what gets me motivated even more so than working for a great company. So I say that to say I believe, and I'm not saying I do it well. I'm telling you I try to do it well. And I fail all the time, but I'm working harder at getting better at it. But I think the best leaders are the ones that are able to inspire us and to create a compelling vision that it can be better than it is today, and it's bigger than us as individuals. So a few parting thoughts, and I'll get off your stage and let you get to lunch because I'm one of the only things standing between you and lunch, and I get that. But building winning teams, maybe talking about winning the war for talent, talking about leading winning teams. I'd ask yourself, is talent management important to you and your communities and your businesses and your organizations? If it is, then dedicate the time to it, right? Anything that we focus on and we dedicate enough time to, typically we see positive results in, right? I would ensure that your talent and management strategy aligns with your overall supply chain or business strategy that hopefully aligns with your overall corporate or enterprise strategy. I develop a talent management framework that fits your supply chain strategy. In other words, we talked about fit, we talked about culture, we talked about things that work, things that don't work. You've all have lived through this, you've all learned, you're all experienced, you know what works in your business and within your group and what doesn't. I would not ever forget the basics of talent management. It's just like anything else. I'm a student of football. I love to watch college football. I tell everybody life can be explained and business can be explained through college football, to that jokingly. But as I study these things, I find out that 70% of just about every group does the same thing. They really do the basics and try to win games executing the basics. And really the difference between, obviously there's talent, right? There's one of the difference between winners and losers in the games, talent. But it's also how well they execute the fundamentals. And so I would encourage you with this as well. There are certain fundamental programs within your business, within your enterprise that work. And it's just about executing those really, really well. Let's not forget to prepare for the next generation of leaders long before we need them to lead. Not, well, hey, 2 weeks from now, so-and-so is retiring. We'd love for you to take this job. Good luck. No, I mean, we ought to be talking about if it's a role that's significant within our business, and every role, by the way, is significant with our business. Let's think of it like that. We ought to be preparing long before we need those people to take over. And I would ask you that know what your brand or your business stands for. I would encourage you to make sure that your culture is very connected and aligned with that. Now, this guy named Michelangelo, you've probably heard of, lived about 500 years ago, right? He said this, I thought, incredibly well 500 years ago, and it seems to still resonate with people today, I think at least. And that is the danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving the mark. So I think excellent leaders expect excellence, right? And they want to get better every day, regardless of how good they are. And so he said this 500 years ago, it remains relevant today. Makes my point. I think that executing fundamentals really, really well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been my honor and privilege to be with you. I think that concludes my talk. Happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Well, it's a great opportunity to have a little dialogue. So one of the reasons why I asked Darrell, first of all, I really like him, and we did some great discussions, but often I will enter the room at a location like yours, Darrell, and I'll talk to supply chain leaders, and I just feel this arrogance, right? This ego. And one of the things I love about Darrell is his humility and his willingness to learn. And I think one of our barriers in supply chain is we think we've got it figured out and we've got huge egos and we're not willing to be humble. So thank you for your ability to be real. Now, when you think about culture and you had to think about a couple of attributes of your culture, what would they be? What would be the first one?
Yeah, good question. One of the things that when we talk to people about coming into our organization is we say this, like I literally have this conversation like when I'm either interviewing someone, having a conversation about would you like to, be a business partner with us? And that is, three absolutes that are not negotiable. We must do things legally, ethically, and morally. Those are not negotiable. We are going to hold ourselves to an incredibly high standards from an ethical standpoint. So when we talk about culture, that's an expectation is very high, conduct from an ethical and moral standpoint. The second thing we ask them to do is we say, guess what? We're interviewing you for this job. We think you're going to help us get better. That's why we're talking to you. I can get bad all on my own. I don't need your help for that, right? I can do that. I think you're going to help us get better. We think, that you have that skill, that capability to do that. And so we'd like for you to maybe partner with us and come to work with us. But here's my ask for you first is we've been in business for, 94 years as a company. So we've done some things well. And so we'd like you to honor the legacy. So come in and just listen and absorb, talk to people, ask them what we do well, what we don't do well for the first 3 months, kind of make some observations. And then after the first 3 months, then let's talk about what we can do to, given your help to get better. So, I think to answer your question from a cultural standpoint, it's an expectation of a very high moral character, high ethical standards, and a willingness to be a little humble and honor those that came before us to help build this great thing that we get a chance now to work in. And then we'll talk about getting better at that point. Builds, I said the first year I want you to build allies, not adversaries. For you to be successful, you need to build allies, not adversaries.
I love that. Build allies, not adversaries. Now, you started out saying that you learned from failure. What were your greatest failures, Darrell, that you learned from?
Yeah, I had so many. Let me think. I guess probably at a very macro level, it's kind of goes back to what I just said, that maybe because I had, taken the courses you're supposed to take in, business or supply chain, maybe I had, talked to the people the gurus who read all the books and that, which by the way was all quite helpful, that maybe when I was young in my career, I didn't listen as much as I talked. And I come to find out, I don't know who said it. Again, I love to quote people. I apologize for not knowing the specific author, but I remember the comment, people will do business with people they like. All things being equal, all things not being equal, they still will. So I guess the thing is, it goes back to the allies versus adversaries. I think one of the learnings for me was, let's spend time getting to know people beyond the job. Let's ask them, one of the things that I always ask my team when I go visit a plant or DC or something, I'll walk in with one of the coaches and I say, tell me about Sue. How many children does she have children? How many children does Sue have? Or does he have a family? If so, do they play sports? I expect those people to connect and with the people that they serve and understand that we're all more, than just, creating, a product and whatever we're people. We need to connect with individuals. And so I would say as a younger leader, I didn't understand the significance of that as much as I do today.
So building that family type of rapport.
Precisely.
Yeah. So I love the humility. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago, you sent a couple of your team members to this conference. And I asked them about Darrell.
Wow.
And
so can we cut the cameras off, please?
I said, I had the opportunity when we were in school together to work with you, and what's Darrell like in the office? And they said, he takes care of us and develops us. And I think that's what we all need to do.
Yeah, we work hard at it, and we make mistakes, but we try to learn from those and get better every day.
What questions do we have for Darrell? Any questions from the phone? They're going to want to know your music. What music do you like? They're grooving online in this virtual forum about music. So, Darrell, you got to kind of
I'll tell you what I love. I'll tell you what my radio stays on, and I hate to because it's going to tell you just how old I am. But no, I'm a 70s guy. I listen to 70s music. So my radio's tuned to 70 on 7.
Okay, here's your question, Darrell. Accountability matched to authority. What's your approach to that? What's governance? Are you like servant leadership? Are you participative leadership? How do you manage governance, and how do you match accountability and authority?
Yeah, so really good question. And I would say, again, I'm going to kind of reference some of the conversation we had just a few moments ago. I do believe in servant leadership. I absolutely believe that. And again, I fail at it miserably at times, but I work really hard. If when I go into an operation, I will, we're going to see the operation. We're going to say all the great things they're doing. We're going to compliment that. And then I'm going to give them some feedback, and I'll get into kind of the accountability and authority thing, and we'll talk about that from an accountability standpoint. But I will end my conversation with, how can I serve you better? That truly is, because I truly believe these ladies and gentlemen are in the field doing the work, and my job is to help enable them to do that work well. Do it legally, ethically, morally, safely, do it well. And so I also believe that you can have accountability within servant leadership, and people sometimes question me, what does that mean? You're saying, hey, you have a difficult situation with a person that you have to deal with. How is that being servant leadership? And I tend to look at, first of all, I'm going to try really hard to help them be successful, because that's the right thing to do. I think most of us would want that from our leaders. Help me be successful. Now, once we've exhausted that, if that's an impossibility, then maybe it's a bad fit. We still want to help people do other things, because we've learned that it's nothing to do with a person. It's just maybe a bad fit, role fit. But I also have to consider, within our global supply chain, we have, over 7,000 people, and I have to consider that as well. I have to serve those other people. So sometimes, you have to look at difficult decisions and say, maybe this person or this leader is in a bad role, a bad fit for them. And let's help them do other things if we can't help them be successful within that role, because I have to serve, the other 7,000+ people. So I do think there is an ability to take and have accountability and still serve well.
And have that balance. Okay, we got a question from the audience.
Darrell, thank you very much for your thoughts. Really appreciate that. The question is around, how do you prepare the organization for big change? Companies get disrupted, industries get disrupted, technology changes. You have to kind of maybe take a new path, etc. How do you get the whole organization to go with you where you need to go?
Yeah, I will tell you, in full disclosure, I think what we're all dealing with today within the global supply chain is, you hear the term used, unprecedented. It truly is, at least in my 30 years. I've never dealt with the magnitude of change on this, from a scale standpoint, either within the supply base, within the customer base, within the geography, from a natural disaster. I mean, there has just been one massive event over another to deal with, and it's incredibly dynamic. What's a problem today is not the biggest problem, although it would have been 2 years ago. The biggest problem of the year is not the biggest problem next week. So I'm leading into saying, I'm going to tell you everything that has worked for me so far, and what I still think fundamentally works really well and will work in the future. But I do think there's pockets of incredible disruption that we're still trying to all figure out. But generally speaking, how do you prepare the organization for big change? I will go back to, in my opinion, through my experience, it's been you start long before the big change occurs. And so what does that mean? That means that you build, I believe, organizationally, a strong foundation on some of those things we talked about years, executing fundamentally on the very basic things of making sure that your culture is right in your business, making sure that you're hiring really smart people. You know, one of the goals we have is we try to hire someone for a professional role that's promotable 2 levels beyond the role we're hiring them, because we're thinking about something 2 or 5 years down the road. And we want to make these ladies and gentlemen are really smart people, and we want to take and develop them. And so we're hiring at a higher level from intellectual capability or from a skill set level. That's what we're trying to do. So it's back to culture. It's back to talent. It's back to making sure that you look enterprise-wide, and I mean beyond the borders of within the supply chain, to say, hey, this person is an incredible talent, but their skill deficit really is not an area that I can help them with. So maybe finance and accounting is an area that I'll look at. Maybe human resources is an area that I'll look at. And so I'll then maybe laterally transition them to a role, knowing that 2 years from now, Joe or Sue is retiring, and they're going to be a great fit for that role. Because again, I'm spending 4 days a year talking about those top people within the organization and what's coming down the road from where the strategy might be going or where the change may be occurring. Again, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're thinking like we're preparing for perhaps change and where we might have weaknesses. For example, you talked about something that I think about a lot. Artificial intelligence and robotics. That's something I'm constantly thinking about. So if that's going to happen on a really wide scale 2, 5, 10 years down the road, I need to be thinking about that today. And I need to be preparing from a leadership standpoint. And I need to be preparing from a talent standpoint. And am I putting them in the right roles for them to be successful? We talked about Supplier Summit. We talked about Supply Chain University. If I have a guy or a young guy, young lady that we see as an emerging talent that has a lot of skill, we're looking laterally across the enterprise. Do we give them help? And because we're growing them, they're really good at this, and now we got to get them strong in the finance side, or they're really strong in finance and they're really strong in analytics, but we really want to help them with their communication style. So I may have HR, find a role in HR, because I know 2 years from now we're going to be putting them somewhere else. But I'm also going to put them in a position like presenting at Supplier Summit, like leading a panel at Supplier Summit, like being in a case competition at Supply Chain University that puts them in front of the C leaders of my company, our company, that they can showcase their hard work, to showcase their ability, to get other people's opinions on them, so that when these big changes occur, even beyond the supply chain, they're saying, oh, Sue is fantastic in Darrell's organization. Let's get her over here because we have a role we think that we're going to need. We don't have to go outside. We've invested in those people for the last few years now. Why go out and recruit? We did the hard recruiting, when we recruited them 2 levels below where we wanted to lead them to. So I go back to, it's really, I believe, fundamentally the basics of good, strong business, culture, fit, talent, and planning. And because who knows what the next big change is going to be. But I think if we have done a really good job organizationally with developing the right culture that fits the values of our company, hiring the strong talent that's capable of being promoted. We've put them in positions to win, to grow their skill set within the company. And so when those changes occur, I think we've at least equipped them with a better chance to be successful.
And Darrell, don't you think if you're allies, not adversaries, you have a higher probability of winning together?
Of course you do.
Yeah. And one of the things I find really fascinating in my supply chain research is we've become much more adversarial in our relationships, and alignment is a really key challenge. Alex, do you have a question for Darrell?
I do. Darrell, thank you so much. I appreciate you started off by saying you're a student, student of leadership. It's really important. Going back to the student piece, I actually graduated from Indiana University in 2019. So relatively compared to most people here, I have no industry experience. So how do you encourage leaders in your organization to value ability and appetite more than experience?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. By the way, my neighbor is an Indiana graduate. So yeah. It's interesting you say that because I loved, I think it's Angela Duckworth's book on grit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that book because I kind of go back to, I think most research will tell us today that attitude kinda, sorta trumps skill, right? I mean, there's a lot of people. Trust me. I don't consider myself that successful, but I am not the smartest guy in the room. I'm telling you, most of the people I work with are far smarter than me, but I really worked hard at kind of honing my craft. I read everything I could read. I talked to every leader I could talk to. I asked for the tough assignments. I was willing to move wherever I was willing to move because I got to go back to that attitude. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to win. I wanted to take and do what you're talking about there. And so how do you get organizations to value it? I think most do. I would encourage you to put your hand up. I'd encourage you to, and maybe you are, I would encourage you to ask for those difficult assignments. I would encourage you to read the books, talk to the men, get mentors. I have mentors. I have a list of mentors. There's people I call every month to say, hey, Joe, hey, Sue, what do you think about this? I'm really grappling with this situation. How'd you deal with it when so I would get mentors. I'd read the books and I would raise my hand. I would go to forums like this and learn, take, executive education, all the things, all the different data points you can to add to your playbook of skill, and raise your hand up when those tough assignments come up. And those are the ones I like the best as a young person coming up within the organizations. I really wanted those tough ones because to me it was a challenge and it was a chance for me to do what you said. I wasn't the smartest guy, but I was willing to outwork, or I was willing to work really hard. And so that was the skill that I had, was attitude and hard work.
And you're a great listener.
I try. I work at it. There's times that I'm not listening as well as I need to. My wife reminds me of that quite often.
I was going to say that, but I don't want to get in trouble with her. What are your top 3 books that you'd recommend that people read?
Oh my goodness. I expected the top 3 things, but the books, oh my goodness. So other than Laura's, right?
No.
Okay. Gosh, probably my favorite book of all time, I think was Lou Gerstner's book about his turnaround of IBM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that book. Was it Elephants Can Dance? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one of my all-time favorite books in business. That was good. Alan Mullally's Icon's good. I'm not going to say it's these are coming to mind that I really enjoyed. Yeah, I would have another category that I love to read coaches. I love to read football coaches, basketball coaches like John Wooden, people like that. I think there's a lot of fundamental, I tend to look for common themes, right? What are some of these common themes? And it gets back to Wooden. Wooden won 10 national championships, I think. Division I at UCLA. I think that's right. 10. I may be wrong. And I was reading and studying him, and it was like, he literally had a class one day, I think, for the incoming freshmen on how to put socks on correctly. It's like, okay. And so the point was that's a fundamental basic thing. Go back to the fundamentals, that players that get blisters on their feet because of, he'd done some, I don't know if maybe his staff had done some research, whatever, would obviously, if we have blisters on our feet and we run up and down the basketball court, it interferes with my performance. And if anything that interferes with my performance is a detractor, and that must be eliminated. So it was worth his time to spend 15 minutes, incoming freshman. So I just love to study people like that. But Wooden, one of the things I loved about Wooden, I think, I say this correctly, is he was really a student of advocating fundamental, basic, just execute the basics really well, and you win most of the time.
All right, last question. I'm talking to the young Darrell.
Okay.
25. What would you tell Darrell about managing his career?
Yeah, about my career. Yeah, my daughter, who is 27, lives here in Nashville, by the way. We both went to Tennessee, well, as did Laura.
That's right. Go Vols, right?
We're Tennessee grads. As did my daughter. When she finished UT, I remember having this conversation with her, because I tried to think about, if I wish someone would have had this conversation with me, right? And the number one thing I told my daughter Addison was, think big. I wished I would have thought bigger. I remember as a young person coming out of school, and, my first job is, gosh, if I could just one day work hard enough to be a plant manager, I'd be just awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If I could work one day, then when I got to be a plant manager, it's like, I still got a long time to go. Well, if I could just have worked hard enough to be like manage more than one plant, that'd be awesome. Uh-huh. So I, as a young person, I lived in my thinking, and I regret that, it's okay, but that's one of the things I would say to a young person is, what is it? Think really big. What is it you want to do? Really big. You want to run a company? If so, do you want to, then that's what you work toward. Don't think you can't do it, because you probably can.
Think big.
Other questions?
I think we're done. I promised to get him to his call at 12.
Thank you,
I
Laura.
really appreciate Darrell.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks to the audience and the questions.
Thank
and
you so much. Appreciate it. I've
you
enjoyed
know,
it.
if you enjoyed Darrell's presentation, buy his sofas. They're great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it. Let's close this.